The grammar of the whole thing is written in the immanent metaphysics. What you see on the left is a notation I tend to use. It's basically a representation of the three modalities. The wave in the middle is the immanent modality. The rectangle represents the omniscient, and the circle represents the transcendent. And the arrow points to the right relationship, like the masculine, the omniscient, in service to the feminine, the transcendent. One trinity that I find quite useful to frame the whole thing or map the whole thing is that of the superstructure, infrastructure, social structure. You can kind of divide the whole project into these three modalities. The project is called Project Liminality, by the way. Superstructure is the concept of liminality itself. Then the infrastructure is what I call liminal space. These two opposite poles let the social structure self-organize into what I call the liminal web. What the project does is, going back to the indigenous perspective, most of it I got from reading Stand Talk by Taisnium Kapurta, taking statements that indigenous people make at face value, just like take it super seriously, not just metaphorically true, but literally true. And one of these statements is that a story is a being. A story also mediates relationship. A story with which I hold something determines how I relate to it. If I relate to a tree as a block of wood to harvest, then I see it as a dead entity. But if my story about the tree is that it's a living entity, that totally changes my relationship to it. So now we can kind of ask the question, what is our story about story? That is kind of like the meta move. The indigenous perspective is kind of like a story as a being. What follows from that is, if it's a being, then we can have a relationship to it that is very similar how a parent and a child have a relationship. If a story is a being, if we use it, it will use us. But if we serve it, it will serve us. Using a story is something like narrative warfare. If I see it as a tool to manipulate the world, then I will manipulate the story to manipulate the world. That is the birth of narrative. In turn, they will also use us, the stories, which is the birth of the egregore or mind viruses and stuff like that. But if we serve the story, which I would say is liminality, if we hold space for it, then it will serve us in the form of collective intelligence. This approach is very promising to actually deliver that thing that many of us are trying to tap into, which is collective intelligence.